Hello everyone and welcome to this tutorial for Google Cloud Directory Sync or GCDS. In this tutorial or in this video I'm going to talk about 5 points. I'll start with what is GCDS, then I will show you where you can download and get the latest versions of this tool. After this we will talk a little bit and in brief about how this tool will work and how this tool will integrate with your Active Directory and how it will sync the users to the G Suite Admin Console. Then I will show you how you can configure the tool. Basically, I will do a little scenario where I will sync about 8 users with their profiles to G Suite Admin Console, and I will sync also the organizational unit structure that I have created on my testing Active Directory. Then finally, I will show you the steps that you need to do in order to set up a scheduled task to make the sync process automated and run based on time intervals that you will decide later on. So let's start with the first point, and basically GCDS or Google Cloud Directory Sync is a tool that is made by Google that will help you create users in bulk in your G Suite Admin Console. So all you have to do is set up the tool on your Active Directory server, make sure the users are configured and the organizational unit structure is prepared if you're going to sync OUs. Then run the sync and all of the users with their information will be created on the G Suite Admin Console. This tool does not only support Active Directory, there are other platforms and directory services that are supported with it, and it also works on Linux operating systems. However, for this video, I'm going to demonstrate it only on Windows operating systems and only on Active Directory services as well. So basically, if you want to download this tool, you'll have to go to the download page, which is this one, tools.google.com/dlpage/dirsync. I'll make sure to post the link for this page in the video description. We need to scroll down a little bit until we see the download button, and once we click it we should automatically get the appropriate file version for our operating system and type of operating system. As you can see, we have the choice between 32-bit and 64-bit Windows. Same goes for 32-bit or 64-bit Linux operating systems as well. We already got the 64-bit version for Windows, so all you have to do is click the downloaded file and start the installation process. The installation is really very simple and straightforward. All you have to do is accept the license agreement, click next, and basically that's it. You are all set. Once the download is complete, then you will need to access or launch the tool, and you can find it in the start menu. Then you expand the applications. Then you will find a group called Google Cloud Directory Sync. In this group there is an item called Configuration Manager. This is the item or the application that we need to start. So once we click it, we will be presented with the Configuration Manager page or window. And this is the initial window for the Google Cloud Directory Sync. Basically, we will create the configuration on this interface, and then we will save the configuration as an XML file. Then whenever we want to do the sync, we will open this configuration manager and load the XML file, then do the sync for the changes that we have created on our Active Directory. So as you can see, we have tabs on the left side. We have to configure each one of these tabs. We will get extra tabs later on, and we need to work on these one by one. So we start from the Google domain configuration, and we should end by the sync tab where we can sync the changes. So before we go into this stuff, let's talk about how this tool will work and how this tool will integrate with the Active Directory and how it will sync the users. First of all, we have to authorize this tool to work with our G Suite Admin Console, and we have to give it access to work with our Active Directory. So as you see here, this is the authorization page for the Admin Console for G Suite. Then the LDAP configuration where we set up the connection to the Active Directory server and allow this tool to connect to the Active Directory server. Once we are done with the setup and the connections for both the G Suite and the Active Directory, we will need to tell the tool then where it will need to search in our Active Directory. And basically we have two options. The value we should type in base DN will decide the location of the search that we are going to do in the Active Directory. So for example, if we keep this value empty, then the tool will search in the whole domain structure. Otherwise, if we type a value in the base DN, the tool will search in the specific location that we will specify in the Active Directory. So just to give you an idea also about the Active Directory structure that I have, I'm going to open the Active Directory users and computers. And here is the Active Directory structure that I have created. There is an OU called salihram.com. In this OU there are two sub OUs. One is for computers, the other one is for users. Of course, we do not need to worry about the computers OU because we are working with users now. So inside the users, you see the structure that I've created, and it's just a demonstration for a small organization structure: admin and HR, and CEO office, finance department, IT, marketing, and sales. Inside each one of these OUs, there are at least one user account. Some of them have two users accounts. So the base DN that I have mentioned earlier, it will actually point to an OU, an organizational unit in our Active Directory. Basically what I will do is I want to point it to the users OU. And if you are not familiar about the base DN and about the Active Directory attributes, which we will mention soon now, I really suggest that you take a quick read about them in Microsoft's TechNet website, or just do a quick search on Google and find the information that you will get. So basically the base DN value can be generated in a very easy and a very straightforward way. And there is a rule that I always follow in this. Basically you'll go from the deep OU to the root OU. So for this case, for the users, it will be OU, because you are talking about organizational units, it will be OU equals users, then comma, then OU equals salihram.com. Then right now we have reached the root of the domain, and this has something else to be written, not OU. For this we will have to type DC, which is domain component, then it will be equals is-linux, and we will stop here. Then we will type comma and DC again, then equals PRI. So the domain part will be split according to the dots that we have. For this case we only got 2 parts. Some cases you might get 3 or 4 parts. So whatever you've got here on this level, the domain level, you will have to type DC, which is domain component. Anything below on the organizational units, even if this is named salihram.com, so it contains a dot, and you might think it will be split into 2 parts. That's not the case. For organizational unit, you'll have to type the complete name for the OU, so OU equals salihram.com regardless of the dot that we have here. So once we set the base DN value, then the tool first will check the organizational unit structure that we have. It will sync this structure to G Suite admin console. Then it will start working with the users, and basically it will work with the users and it will retrieve their information from the Active Directory schema or the Active Directory attributes. Because let's open one user from the finance. I think this user has some information in it. Because you see these values: the first name, last name, the display name, the email, and then if you go to addresses, we see some information in the addresses, and if we go to organization, we see the title, the department, and the company. These information are all stored in the Active Directory attributes in the schema. The way to see these attributes is, first you have to go to view, then make sure that you have selected the advanced features. After this you open the user properties and you will find a tab called attribute editor. When you click this attribute editor, you should see the list of all of the attributes for this object or this user account. All you have to do is scroll down and find the attributes that you want. For example, the C for country, it's not filled here. The CN, the canonical name, which is already set. The company, which we saw the value before in the organization. Then if you scroll down a little bit, we can see the display name, and we can see also the employee ID value, which basically you can fill it and it will be synced to the G Suite admin console. However, I think you will have to fill it through the attribute editor. So double click on it, or actually edit, type a value here, and it should be synced. So let's type a value for 7112, and then if you scroll down a little bit, you will see the extension attribute 1, and then I think up to 15. These are extra attributes that basically custom attributes you can use. You can assign whatever value you want to these attributes, and if you wanted, you can use them in the GCDS tool. You can sync whatever value in this attribute, for example, to a corresponding field or value in G Suite admin console. And to give you an example, I'm going to set a value here as an additional email address for this user. So I'm going to click edit, and I'm going to type another email address, which is just something to make it obvious. and that's it. So we've got one primary email address for this user, which is this one, and we've got another one for the user, which is the one that we have just typed in the extension attribute one. There is another value for the extra email addresses, which is called proxy addresses, which I'm going to show you now. Here is the given name for the user, which is the last name or the first name, sorry. This is the IP phone for the extension, it's not set here actually. The L for locale, which is the city. And if you want an easier way to find all of the attributes that have values, you can just go to filters and click show only attributes that have values, and you'll only see the attributes that are actually filled with values instead of seeing all of the attributes. As you can see, the list has become more shorter than the previous one. So this is the mail value also, and put a note on this mail attribute, and also put a note on the object grid attribute. Just put a note on them. We're gonna come back to these again very soon. We have the SN, which is the short name or the last name. We have the postal code, the postal or the PO box. There is the other value for the proxy addresses. This one is also used to assign aliases or extra email addresses for the user, and basically this is the official attribute for assigning aliases for user accounts. So if you put anything in here, it will be considered as an extra email address for this user account. So this will be taken by default into the tool, and we do not need to do anything about it. There is another attribute called user password, which will be also used in the tool, and put also a note on this one because I'm gonna have a little talk about it when the time comes. Basically, this is how the tool will work. It will read these attributes from the Active Directory. It will take the information that are stored inside them, and it will upload them to the corresponding field on G Suite. So let's start now. Let's go to the Configuration Manager window and let's start the configuration for the tool. So first of all, as I mentioned, we have to configure the Google domain configuration part. And we have three tabs that we need to configure. Basically, the proxy settings you only need to worry about if you are using a proxy server in your network and you have to fill proxy values in here. I do not use it in this lab, so I don't have to worry about. We'll start with the connection settings, and we'll have to enter the domain name. Then we need to authorize it, and the authorization process is basically of two steps. First of all, we'll be taken to a sign-in page. We'll have to sign in with the account, with the super administrator account for our G Suite admin console. Then we'll have to allow the tool to work with our G Suite domain. We'll grant it permissions, and we will be given an authorization token or a verification code that we need to paste in this field. So let's click sign in, and I will sign in with the super administrator account, and these are the permissions that we are being asked to allow for the tool to work properly. As you see, they are all about managing the calendar resources, the groups, the user accounts, the contacts in the domain. So we are fine with this. We'll click allow, and here is the verification code that we should take, copy, and we'll paste it in the configuration manager. And as you can see now, the connection succeeded, means that we are doing good so far. Then before we move on to the next tabs, I just want to talk a little bit about this tab, which is called Exclusion Rules. Basically, we have two places we can create exclusion rules for user accounts. We can create in this location the exclusion rules that are found in the Google domain configuration, and there is another exclusion rules for user accounts that are found in this tab, user accounts. The difference between those is the one that is found in the Google domain configuration is used for the accounts that are found in the G Suite admin console and not found in the Active Directory domain, because GCDS will take all of the information and it will consider the Active Directory as the source of all of this information, and it will configure the G Suite admin console to match the structure that is found on the Active Directory for users and accounts and groups and organizational units. I do not know if I have mentioned this before, but the sync will be one way only. It will be from the Active Directory to G Suite. So we do not have two-way sync. If you change anything on the Active Directory and then you do the sync, the changes will be reflected to the G Suite admin console. if you change anything on the G Suite admin console, then nothing will be affected on your Active Directory. This means also that if a user account that is only found on the G Suite admin console, the tool will mark this account for deletion or suspension because the account is not found on the Active Directory. This is actually the default behavior for the tool, and there is another behavior that is related to the super administrators or the administrator accounts in G Suite admin console. And basically any account that is having the administrator role will not be deleted at all or never be suspended at all, even if it was not found on the Active Directory. This is basically a security issue because if, for example, the account was suspended, if you lost access to your super administrator account, then you lose access to the admin console and you will not be able to configure anything in the G Suite admin console. So this exception is on by default, but if you have normal user accounts that you do not want them to be deleted from the G Suite admin console, if they are not found on the Active Directory, then this is the place where you need to set up the exception. And basically it's all about clicking add exclusion rule. Then in the type, and basically this is the object type that we want to create the exception for, we expand the list and we can see all of the objects that are available on the G Suite admin console that can come from the Active Directory. So we have organizational units, we have user email address, alias email address, group email address, and calendar resources as well. So for this test, actually I'm going to type a user email address. Then the match type, you have the option to choose an exact match. It means that it will match the whole text that you will enter here with the whole value or with the whole field of the user email address. Or substring match, it will match this text that you will enter here with any part in the user email address. Or regular expression. Actually, I'm not going to talk about regular expression. I will keep the exploration for this for you. I will post a link in the video description about regular expression from the Google Help site. It will give you some good information about the regular expressions that are used in G Suite. So for this test, I'm going to select exact match. And for example, let's assume that we have an email called secretary. This guy does not have an account on his Active Directory. He only uses G Suite for his emails and for his data storage, and he even uses the docs and sheets and all of this. But he does not have an account on the Active Directory. So when we do this sync, his account on G Suite will be either deleted or suspended, but we do not want this behavior. So we just create the exclusion rule, type his email address and click OK. And that's it. When we do the sync now, this account will be kept as it is and nobody will touch this account at all. This is for the first tab. Then we have to go and configure the tool to connect to our Active Directory server. And first of all, we'll have to select the server type as MS Active Directory. Then the connection type will be standard LDAP, and then the host name. Let me get the host name because I always forget it, even if it is a small and a very easy one. And this is the host name for my machine. Then I will keep the port on default, and the authorization type is simple, and basically we need to type a user account that will be able to connect to the Active Directory and retrieve the information from the attributes. Now Google will tell you that you can use a user account that is member of the domain admins group, and the reason for this is you need to make sure that the user account you are using is allowed and having the permissions to access the Active Directory attributes and retrieve all of the required information to be synced to G Suite. I have tried this with a user that is member of domain users only, and it basically worked, but I did not get the chance to confirm that members of domain users have access to all of the attributes. I think they already have, they should have, because when you browse the global address list and when you browse the address list in your domain, you see all of this information. So I think basically you should be able to go with a domain user account, but just to make sure that everything is fine here, I'm going to use a domain admin user account. So enter the domain name. And note here that the local domain name does not need to match the domain name that we're using on G Suite. As long as the value in the email field in here matches the value that you have on the G Suite admin console, then that's fine. So Now we come to the base DN value. As I mentioned, this is where we will look for objects in the Active Directory. If I set a value for base DN in here, it means that it will be the default value for all of the objects that we're going to sync with the G Suite admin console. The tool will look in this location for all of the objects. If I do not type a value, then the default value will be set to the root of the domain, which is this one. So the tool will look in the whole domain structure for me to find the objects that I want to sync. As I mentioned, I only want to sync the users, so I will type the base DN for the users. And before actually I type it, there is another way you can get the base DN, an easier way and a way that might save you the typing mistakes and all of this. Just make sure also you have selected the advanced features, and then right click the OU, go to properties, then go to attribute editor, and there you go. This is the value for the distinguished name or the base DN value. Double click on it. You can just take this text, copy it and paste it wherever you want to use it in any application or tool that you need. I will actually type it manually, so it's equals OU equals, then OU equals salihram.com, then dc equals i/linux, then we stop before the .pri and we make comma, then dc equals pri, and that's it. Now to test if our settings and information that we typed are correct, we will click test connection. We should get a message that connection succeeded, and there we go, we already got it. Okay, now we have completed the connection to the Active Directory and we are ready to choose what objects that we need to sync. So we'll go to general settings, and as you can see we are presented with a list of checkboxes. For this case and for this video, I want to sync actually the organizational units, and I do not want to sync the groups. However, I want to sync the user profiles as well. If you notice, when I click an object, a tab will open for it, and when I uncheck an object, a tab will be removed for it. So when I click the organizational unit, note the tab for OUs that have appeared. When I click user accounts, note the user accounts tab, and the user profile got me the user profiles tab. So let's start with the org units. Basically, the way to sync the org units to G Suite is we will create a mapping for the root OU that will be found on G Suite with the root OU of the structure that is currently existing on the Active Directory. So going back to the Active Directory, I want to create on G Suite an OU called users, and under that users OU, I want to see this structure with the user accounts inside it. So the way to do it is I need to map this root OU with another OU on G Suite Admin Console. And basically that other OU on G Suite Admin Console will be named users also. I will go to the tool, to the configuration manager. I will click add mapping, and then again I will have to type the base DN for the OU, for the root OU that I want to map to G Suite. So again, OU equals users, OU equals and DC equals i/linux, and DC equals pri. For the Google domain name, it's just the name of the OU, and that's it. So click apply. So what is going to happen now is I will see an OU on the G Suite Admin Console named users. Under that users OU, I will see the same structure as I have here. Next, we want to let the tool know where it is going to search for the organizational units. And you might wondering that we've already told the tool where to look in the Active Directory. This is correct, but we have to specify a search rule for each of these objects. And the search rule will take the location that we specified in the LDAP configuration as the default search location. So the easiest way to do the search rule is click use defaults, and as you see the search rule has been automatically created for us. So double click on it. This is what we have in the search rule. This is the description attribute for the organizational unit. So the description will be synced also to G Suite. This is the LDAP query, and If you want to know more about the LDAP query, then you might want to read about it as well. It's a way to query the LDAP for objects and information. And basically, we do not use it directly a lot in these days, but it's good actually to know about it because it's really interesting and nice to know about the Active Directory structure. So basically, we are looking for organizational units in here. You see the object class equals organizational unit. And you notice the base DN value is empty. And this is what I was talking about. It will take the value that is specified in the LDAP configuration as the default base DN. If you want to override this value, the default value, then you need to type something here. For example, if I want to search one OU up in the tree, so I can type OU equals sallyram.com, DC equals is-linux, DC equals PRI. Let's type it and see what's going to happen. Let's click test LDAP query and see what we are going to get here. So we've got 9 results. We are seeing the first 5 results of those. And if you notice, we've got among the results the root OU, which is called sallyram.com. However, if we use the default OU or the default base DN that we specified earlier in LDAP configuration, let's click LDAP query and see now we've got only 7 results and we're seeing the first 5 results of those. And of course, the OU sallyram.com is not among them. So this is basically how the search rules and the base DN work in different parts of the objects that we're going to sync. I'm actually fine with the default location, so I will click OK. Then we've got something called exclusion rules. Basically, the exclusion rules here also are some sort of a safety measure for the objects that we have on the G Suite admin console. Let's say that you have created everything and you have configured the sync and all of your stuff are being synced nicely and without any issues to the G Suite admin console, but suddenly something happened to the objects in the Active Directory and all of them were deleted or moved to someplace else, and the tool can no longer see the objects in the specified base DN location. So what the tool is going to do is it will mark everything on G Suite for either removal or suspension based on the result that it will see from your Active Directory. And if the sync runs without any safety measures or anything, then you will lose everything on the G Suite admin console. So this section of the exclusion rules is a way to prevent the mass modification of the objects that we have on the G Suite admin console. So you see now the option tells us that do not synchronize if deletions would exceed 5% of organizations. This is the default value. You can increase it or decrease it to whatever you want, and you can also set it as an absolute number. So for example, 10 organizational units. This means that if you are going to delete 9 organizational units in the sync process, that's fine. If you are going to delete more than 10 organizational units, then the sync process will be aborted and it will not be performed. This is a very important setting and I really recommend that you keep it to the default, or maybe you can increase it to something like 10 or 15% if you want. However, I'm going to keep it to the 5%. So this is for the org units. Next is the user accounts. Basically, the user accounts is just to sync the account itself. It's not about the other information that are for the account. It's not for the telephone numbers and all of this. We have the user profiles for the telephone numbers and addresses and all of this information. So you remember when I told you to put a note on the email attribute and the object grid also? Here they come. So basically the Google Cloud Directory Sync will have 2 fields to work with the user as an identification. First the email and then something called the object grid. I'm gonna click use defaults so I can have that field in. So to explain to you the idea of or why the object grid is used here, let's forget about the object grid for now. Let's only pretend that we have the email attribute only. And let's say that we have a user named John Smith. This John Smith user is using his email happily and is sending and receiving emails and files and documents and all of this. And suddenly the management told you that you need to change the email address for John Smith from john.smith to become jsmith. So you open your Active Directory, you go to the user account, you change the field of the email address to become jsmith. When you run the sync tool, now the tool will look at the users in the Active Directory. It will not find John Smith, however it will find jsmith. But in G Suite admin console there is a user called john.smith and there is nothing about jsmith. The tool will mark john.smith for either deletion or suspension, and it will create a new account with the email address of jsmith because it actually did not see john.smith in the Active Directory, so it considered it to be removed, and it did the action based on the policy that is configured on it to either remove or suspend the account. When our friend John Smith tries to log in with his account after the change, he will be surprised to find that he got a completely new email account with no data and no documents at all. Let's put now the object GUID field into the equation, and let's repeat the scenario again. You open the Active Directory and you change john.smith to become jsmith, and you run the sync. Now the tool will look at jsmith and it will see, okay, I've got something new, but it will look again to the object GUID and it will see that the object GUID is for the same account that it has on the G Suite admin console, because the object GUID will not be changed at all. Changing the object GUID means having a completely new account. So based on the object GUID, the tool will know that this is just the same account. We are only changing the email address of this account. So based on this, the tool will update the email address of this user account, because G Suite treats the user accounts based on their email ID, and renaming the email account for a user means changing the username for this user account. We needed something actually to tell the tool and G Suite that we are still working with the same user, but we are changing the email account, or we are renaming the user account. And here comes the object GUID attribute or field. Next, also we have the alias address attribute, and as I said, this is the default proxy addresses, but if you have another field, which we actually did create an email address in the extension attribute 1, you can just add it here, and I'm going to add the extension attribute 1. So what's going to happen now is the tool will read these two attributes, and whatever value that is found in these attributes, it will create as an alias for the user account. You just need to make sure that the email addresses are matching the domain name that we have on the G Suite. Otherwise, you will get an error in the sync telling you that the domain name for the alias is not authorized or not allowed in the sync process. Means that the tool is actually not authorized to work with that domain name, even if it was a fake domain or whatever. In the second half of this interface, here comes the policy that the tool will use for the accounts that are only found on G Suite and are not found on the Active Directory. So as I told you, the accounts that are not found on the Active Directory will either be deleted or suspended. Here you can select this policy. I really recommend that you choose suspend, just because the suspension is more fault tolerant than the deletion of users. Then the checkbox, do not suspend or delete Google domain admins not found in LDAP. This is the default policy that I have told you about for the administrator accounts. It is enabled by default, so no administrator account will be deleted even if it was not found in the Active Directory. And I really recommend that you keep it enabled, because losing access to your administrator account means a lot of troubles for you. So moving next to the other tab, which is additional user attributes. This is basically for the given name and the family name, first name and last name. All you have to do here is click use defaults, and these will be filled automatically for you. Now the second half of this interface is about the user password sync, and basically this actually does not work as you think it will work. It is not going to sync the passwords for your users. It will only sync the passwords for new user accounts that you create on G Suite admin console. And you notice the password attribute is not filled for us, so you have to fill it manually. And if you hover on the name of the field or the line, you see the highlighted or the bold word user password. This is the same attribute that we have seen previously in the Active Directory. so we'll have to type it here. I'm not sure why it is not filled automatically. Basically that's it. This is what all we need to do in this tab or this interface, additional user attributes. Now again we come to the search rule. We just need to create the search rule, and it will automatically take the base DN value from the LDAP configuration. If you want to override it again, we can just type the value or the base DN that we want to look inside. Just to confirm that the settings are okay, actually I will click test LDAP query, and you see that we got 8 results, and we are seeing the first 5 results of those. Next is the exclusion rules tab, and this tab is for the accounts that are on the Active Directory but you do not want to sync them to the G Suite admin console. For example, if you have local service accounts such as notification service at your domain, or email service, or workflow service, or whatever accounts that you have locally that you do not want them to be created on G Suite, even though you have filled the email address value in their accounts on the Active Directory. So you can actually create an exclusion rule for those accounts. All you have to do is click add exclusion rule, and then you choose the field or the type that you want to match, either the alias or the primary email address. We'll keep it to the primary email address. And actually there is something nice I want to show you here. We'll choose the match type to be substring, and I will type the word service, and I will click OK. What I just did now is I have told the tool to ignore any email account or any user account on your Active Directory that have the word service in its email address. So by this you can create an exclusion rule for multiple accounts using only one exclusion rule. This is good if you have all of the service accounts or the accounts that you do not want to sync to G Suite are sharing the same part of the email address. So you do not have to worry about creating an exclusion rule for each one of these email accounts. The upper section of this interface is actually similar to the org units, the safety measures that we found in the org units. However, for the user accounts we have two cases. We have either delete or suspend, and we get the option to control how we want to deal with those two cases. So it's set to 5% by default on those two cases. So this means that if you are suspending or deleting more than 5% of the total user accounts that we have in the G Suite admin console, the sync process will be aborted and it will not be completed. You can set it to a fixed number, or you can keep it to the percentage. It's up to you really, but it's important that you have a number in here, and you do not need to actually set it to 99% or anything. Because if something goes wrong in your Active Directory and this was set, for example, to 99, or this was set to a very high number, then you will lose the user accounts and you will get in a lot of troubles. Next is the user profiles, and you see a lot of fields in here, and you might worry about how you can fill all of this information. Actually, you just need to click use defaults and all of this will be filled for you automatically. You see now we have the fields that are in the G Suite admin console with the matching attribute in the Active Directory, and you have option to change the attribute also if you want. So for example, if you wanted to use one of the custom attributes, that we see here, we can actually take it and use it in the tool. So instead of, for example, the mobile, we can use extension attribute 2 or 3 or whatever, up to 15. So any value that is written in the extension attribute 2 will be used for the telephone number on G Suite. And basically you can use these attributes anywhere as long as you are able to change the value of the attribute. And this is the great thing about this tool really, and about the Active Directory really, because you get a lot of flexibility and a lot of control on what information that you can sync to G Suite admin console and to your user accounts on G Suite. I'm going actually to click use defaults again to fix the attribute that I ruined. Then again the search rule, basically we'll click the use defaults, and basically that's it. Now we came to the notifications tab. Basically we do not need to fill the information here, because if we check the sync tab now, we only get warnings on those. It means that we can actually continue the sync without worrying about those, but it's good to have some sort of reporting on the sync status. So once you configure the notifications, we will get a report, and you'll be able to send reports to whoever wants to see the status of the sync process, whether it was completed successfully or failed. So you can see the report of the sync in your email. You will see all of the details. You will get all of the errors. You'll be able to see what are the errors and where did they happen, and then you'll be able to take action on fixing these errors, whether from your Active Directory or G Suite Admin Console. So I'm going to type the Gmail email settings. Then I'm going to type the recipient addresses. Basically, I'm going to send it to myself. Once you type the email address, you have to click add actually, so the address can be added to the list. Then the last three checkboxes, basically they are options for you to remove some details from the report that will be sent through the email. I really recommend that you do not check any of these, because you need as much as details as you can get from the report. And once you're done, you can click test notification to test the configuration here. It will basically send a test message to the recipient in here, so you'll be able to know if the connection was successful or not. And before finally we see the login tab. Basically this is where the log file will be kept, and the log file will give you more details than the ones sent in the email. And you can also change the level of the log file. You can make it to the most detailed report or log file by changing it to trace. However, the trace will give you every single detail that is available in the tool. It will even give you the queries that are sent to the Active Directory, the responses that came from the Active Directory, and all of these. You can also get to the lowest level of details, and you can only set it to show errors and the fatal errors actually in the log. But if you set it to info, it will be a good log and it will be a balanced log. So I really recommend that you keep it to the info or make it to debug, but never make it to trace, because the trace will give you a lot of information and you will be very overwhelmed with the information, and you'll actually get lost in what you will see in the trace level of the log. So I'm gonna keep it to info. And note also the maximum log size is 4 gigabytes. It means that once the log file reaches the 4 gigabytes, it will be archived and a new log file will be created for you. And basically this is it. Once we go to the sync, we see that we've got everything is okay now. And for the sync, we have two options. We have simulate sync and we have sync and apply changes. The simulate sync, basically it will show you all the steps that are going to happen, and it will give you all the differences and all of the actions that are going to be changed and performed on the G Suite Admin Console. However, it will stop before implementing these changes. It will only pretend that it is doing changes, but it will not do these changes. This is a good way actually to test your settings before going to commit them on the G Suite Admin Console, just to make sure that everything you set up is going to work the way you need and the way you want, and you do not have any errors in the process. If you get errors, for example, in the simulation, you can go back and fix them without affecting anything on your G Suite Admin Console. Then you can run the simulation again, and so on until you end up without any errors or any issues in the sync. Before we are actually able to simulate or sync and apply changes, we have to save the configuration file. And as I mentioned, it is an XML file, so we have to save it somewhere on our operating system, and I will click Save As. And for the configuration file, I really recommend also that you create a folder and you save the configuration file inside this folder, because every time you open the configuration and you do a change to this configuration, a version file will be created next to the configuration file in the same directory. So if you do a lot of changes and a lot of saves and all of these, you will end up with a lot of files that are actually going to make a lot of clutter for you, and you will actually get lost with the large number of files. So it's good to create a folder and save the configuration inside this folder. And I'm gonna name the folder GCDS, and that's it. I'll go inside it. Then I will change the name also for config, and that's it. Okay, now the settings has been saved. We'll go back to the sync tab and I will click simulate sync. This is the sync window. First, actually, it will pull the data from the Active Directory. Then it will pull the data from the G Suite Admin Console. It will compare them and it will find the differences, and then it will take the actions based on the policies and the configurations that we are configured in the tool before. For the simulator, it will only actually show you the changes, it will not implement them. So as you see here, for the analyze organizational units, we have 7 local OUs, 0 remote. The local means AD, the remote means G Suite. The proposed changes is it will create new OUs, it will not delete or modify anything. Here are the OUs that it will create. Same goes for the user accounts. We have 8 local user accounts, we have 1 remote user account. This is the administrator account that we have on the GC admin console. So what are the proposed changes? It will only create 8 new accounts. It will not delete or suspend any account, because this account is a super administrator account and the policy tells we do not need to suspend or delete any administrator account. Here are the 8 new accounts that are being created. And you see here that this guy is having an alias which we stored in the custom attributes, the extension attribute 1. So the tool reads that attribute and it extracted the alias from it, and it has assigned it to the user account on G Suite admin console. And these accounts also are being created in their corresponding organizational unit. This guy is created in IT, this guy also is created in IT, and so on. Now we come to the profiles. You see we have 8 local profiles and 1 remote profile. Again, the remote profile will not have anything to do with it because it's a super administrator account and will not be changing that. So here are the profiles. You see now they are actually adding the titles for these accounts, the department, the title. Here is also the information for this account. He has his telephone numbers. The employee ID, which we filled through the Active Directory attributes, has been updated to the G Suite admin console as well. So this is the report for the simulation, and once we are fine with the changes that are going to be implemented, all you have to do is click sync and apply changes, and it will ask us now the changes are going to be implemented. Are we sure that we need to implement these changes? We'll click yes, and this is the same interface again. It will start doing its stuff. First of all, it will create the organizational units. Then it will create the user accounts. After the user accounts, it will update their profiles, and then it will finish the sync process. Okay, and here is the report after the sync process is completed. We will get this same report through the email, so we can see all of these details in the email, and we can see the status of the migration from our inbox. So in order to check the changes that have been done, we can go to the admin console and we can compare the structure that we've got now with what we have on the Active Directory. Here we'll click users, and as you can see now we've got the structure same to what we had on the Active Directory before. So going for example to the finance OU and clicking the testing user 01, expanding the account also, we see that the employee ID, the title, the department as well, the secondary email also here, which is the alias. If we open the users attributes also, we can see the same information. For example, the employee ID, this is the employee ID, the custom attribute, which is the second email address, the secondary email address, which we saw on the G Suite admin console, the title, and so on. The other user accounts should have also the same information as we saw for the finance manager or the testing user 01. So this is it for the sync. What's left for me now is I show you how you can set up a scheduled task for the sync to be automated. You can actually set up the task to run multiple times per day or even one time per day. For this you need some information about the command line tool that is coming with the GCDS, and there is a link on the Google help site for this that will give us the available arguments for the sync-cmd.exe file, which is the file or the command that we're going to use to do the automated sync. I will post the link for this article in the video description as well. To do this, you need to go to the task scheduler from the server manager, and from the task schedule library we'll create a new task. You can name it whatever you want, for example GCDS sync, and it's better that you choose actually run whether user is logged on or not, because you need to make sure that the task can run at any time that is triggered. Then in the triggers, you'll have to select the triggers or the time that you want this task to run on. So we click new, and we want this task to run daily, and also you can have it repeated every, for example, 1 hour or even less. You can have up to 5 minutes, but it's good actually to have it every 15 minutes if you want. And you can make it reoccurring, and you can make it repeating for actually forever until you either stop or delete this task. So we'll click OK. Next is the actions, and here is where you will type the executable file, the path for the executable file, and the arguments that are needed for this executable file. Before we go into that section, this is the article that I was talking about, synchronize using the command line. If we scroll down a little bit, we see the sync-cmd command argument. We need to use actually the first two arguments, the A for apply and the C for config. The A means that we want to apply the settings, not just do a simulation. Without the A, it will do just a simulation and it will not apply anything to the G Suite admin console. Then the C, it means that we want to load a specific configuration file so we can use it in the sync process. We'll have to use these. So the way to do this is, and basically it's a little bit strange way to do it. We'll click new for the actions. Then it will be start a program. The program and script is going to be cmd.exe, and the arguments will be /c, and then here we will load a batch file, a file.bat, where I actually typed the instructions or the commands to do the sync. And to give you an idea about this batch file, I want to show you the content of this file. So it's on the desktop. This is the file. I'll right click and then edit. So it will go to program files, Google Cloud Directory sync, and then it will run the sync-cmd. I think I should type .exe here. Then it will use the A for the apply and C to load the configuration file, which we saved in the documents GCDS folder. So I will load this file to the scheduled task, and I want to actually find the complete path for it. So I'll go to C, users, then admin, then desktop, and this is the file. So copy and paste. And basically that's it. The task is ready now. Once we click OK, I will be presented with a dialog box to enter the password for the admin who will run the sync or the task. And to demonstrate how this task will work, I just created a new user account only on G Suite. This is a normal user account, it is not an admin user account. And by the time we run the sync, the user should be suspended, and we should see it disappear from this list. So let's go back to the task scheduler and let's run the task. So right click on it and run. Now it will take some time, I think about 2 or 3 minutes to complete. Okay, and the task is completed. Let's check now the admin console and what we've got there. So let's refresh. As you can see, the user that I have created has disappeared from this list. We can find it in the suspended users list. So this is the user, and the task in this case is running fine, and we should be able to do the sync automatically. So this is it for this tutorial. I'm sorry if it was a little bit long. I hope you find it useful, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe as well in the channel. Please also check my website and my blog. I hope this was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.